everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, and publisher at Autonomy Global. If you haven't figured it out yet, we've got Flyability on the show this week, and it's all about energy this month, thanks to Volatus Aerospace. We've got a wonderful friend, Junio Palomba, on the show with us. Junio
Hi,
is
Zoom. Good to see you.
it's great to see you again. You were on last year. I know we talked a lot about public safety and the Elios 3 and all the things you're doing in that space. But I think I first met you and was exposed to Flyability at the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition Summit. And when I saw this caged drone for the first time, it really wowed me. And you guys just continue to improve it year after year. So I'm so excited to have you back on the show and get all the updates. But before we do, we talk about all of that. I want to know about you, Junio, because you've got an incredible background yourself. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, Don, first of all, thank you very much for having me again as a guest. This is one of the events I always look forward throughout the year. So a little bit about myself. Believe it or not, I've been at Flyability for almost 10 years now. I'm running
Wow.
into 9.5. Yes, it's kind of, I had long hair when I started working here and sort of slowly went away. I've had the pleasure of working at Flyability, yes, for almost 10 years now. During the last 2.5, I've served as managing director for the Americas, plural. So overseeing the day-to-day work and expansion of our Denver office. We went through a pretty dramatic growth last year. We went from having 4 employees full-time to having a staff of 13 and counting. We're currently hiring, so check out our careers page.
Wow.
Yes, it's been a tremendous ride. It's been a wonderful success across many sectors, and energy has definitely helped us establish even more the Flyability's name in the drone industry in the US and also in other countries, of course.
Now, the headquarters and kind of the origin story is in Europe. Tell everybody about where you guys are headquarters and just briefly all the countries you're in now, because when you mentioned this expansion in your team, I know some of them are in Denver, Colorado, just an hour from me.
Correct, yes.
But I believe you also have offices in Switzerland, Singapore, and is it Shanghai?
And you're absolutely right on the money, Don. So Flyability as a company is a spin-off of the Federal Polytechnical Institute of Lausanne, like so many other drone companies. We have a little bit of a drone valley right here in Switzerland. That's what I'm calling you from the mothership. So Flyability is about 11 years old. We have our total headcount globally, it's about 150 people. The majority are right underneath me, our core team of engineers working on the next and the best, and the improvement of the Elios 3 platform. So this is really where the magic happens here in Switzerland. We do the manufacturing, the production, the R&D, everything related to the Elios 3 product. Indeed, we have a strong presence also in Asia with teams in Korea, Singapore, China, and Japan, and Australia. And we're looking to expand soon to Brazil as well. We're looking to recruit our very first staffers there. So if you know anybody, fluent Portuguese speaker and proficient in sales, that would be also a very nice addition to our team. But yes, we keep on growing, we keep on adding stuff, and that's just a testament to the success of the company.
As I'm listening to you, two things come to mind. One is I think I saw your drone somewhere on some table at the Japan Drone and AAM Expo. I was there just like a
We're
week.
everywhere. We're everywhere.
You are everywhere. And then the second thing that comes to mind is if you haven't met them yet, you need to meet Manuel from Speedbird Aerial. They make drones. They're very different than yours with very different mission. But they're headquartered in Brazil and obviously Portuguese speaking. So, if you need help, I think that would be an amazing collaboration between you and Speedbird Aero. So we'll make that intro afterwards. But So spinning out of basically the university, tell us a little bit about that kind of origin story. In other words, your founder, I think there's two co-founders, right? It's Patrick
And
that
Adrian, yes,
both. Did I say that right?
exactly. Yeah, you're right on the money once again.
Woohoo.
So,
Okay. But I usually butcher everybody's names, so that's great.
no, it's Patrick Deveau is the CEO and co-founder, and Adrian Brio is also is the CTO and co-founder. So Elios really as a brainchild is Adrian's brainchild. It was pretty much sort of the extension or the coming to life of his final doctorate dissertation. And he was trying to answer the question of how to navigate, how to fly in confined spaces. Um, it's actually a very it's a very fascinating story from an engineering point of view, because like the best of them, Adrian borrowed from nature, and basically as most of his colleagues were trying to fit as many sensors as possible on the different kind of drones. He actually figured out that the best way to navigate in an environment with no GPS is actually to use collision, not avoid it. And he took inspiration from the fruit fly, which actually uses the environment around it to navigate and learn from it. And this was really sort of the origin story of Gimbal, which is sort of the great grandfather of Helios 3. And
Yep.
it was a very basic drone. There was barely any sensors on it. I think there was only a barometer. And so that was really the beginning, the incipit, the genesis of flyability. That prototype, really put together with the tape and zip ties, went on to win the first prize at the Drones for Good competition in Abu Dhabi. And that was sort of $1 million, and then went on sort of to become the very first seed money from Flyability. And I guess you could say the rest is history. We're here 11 years later, three versions of the drone after it, with so many more sensors, so much more potential. And I do believe that the best is yet to come.
Well, absolutely. And you mentioned GPS denial, right? So we're seeing this on the battlefield, but clearly in a lot of these, let's say, enterprise platforms, whether it's a mine or some kind of an underground tunnel, this idea, of course, there's no GPS down there. What are some of the specific challenges that, as your co-founders were developing this drone and then over time improving it, what were some of the things that they were seeing that they then kind of built to? In other words, what do industrial companies face when inspecting in these kind of very difficult confined spaces in particular?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to put this into perspective as a health and safety and business challenge. So every year, roughly, according to BLS and OSHA, there is roughly 2.1 million workers in the US alone that require entry permit for confined spaces.
Wow.
This is per year. It's huge. It's massive, and it's unfortunately it's one of the leading causes of injuries or casualties in the workplace. Roughly, on average per year, there are 92 fatalities in the US in confined spaces alone. The additional tragedy, if you will, is that 60% of these fatalities are actually from would-be rescuers. So not the original person entering the confined space, but actually someone who's trying to come in and rescue who already went in the first place. So on a pure and basic, simple human level, it's a tragedy, and what makes it even more difficult to accept is that it's incredibly it's preventable.
Yeah.
Now, there has been some significant improvements in some parts of the United States with regards to the legislation for confined spaces, but unfortunately, these kind of accidents happen every day. So when we talk about confined spaces and connecting this to your question, the challenges from a technological perspective is the unpredictability of the environment, right?
Yep.
Because more often than not, the people that go to inspect these places, they don't know that we're gonna find inside.
Right.
Sure, there might be some blueprints, there might be records of previous inspections, but because by definitions these are dark and dangerous areas, you don't know what you're going to find.
Right.
Something might have moved, something might have shifted, something might be floating, something might be falling, and the drone is specifically designed to have this element of speed, agility, and visibility that allows it to really explore the most difficult to access areas. And we're talking nuclear storage facilities. Check out the work that we did with DOE Idaho. We're talking about underground mines, and the reference there are numerous. We're talking about sewers. We're talking about, we saw at the beginning, turbines. So the challenge was to create a platform that was easy enough to be deployed regularly, frequently, and easily, with something that was sturdy enough and capable of collecting both visual and digital data.
Yeah. Well, I feel like every year there's at least one or two tragedies we see on the international news where there's a group of people stuck in a mine, or in one of these confined spaces every single year. If I forget where the recent one was it like in Thailand? There was just a handful of people, right? And then they, like you said, they had to send the divers in and all of this. And it becomes like an international rescue effort. And of course, whether it's, death would be the ultimate injury, but, just damage to people in general, is one thing, and the safety concerns. But, short of that, of course, cost is another issue, right? Like for these asset owners, because my understanding, and it's limited, I know you're the expert here, things like a tank, for example, where you're going to do an internal inspection, you may have to put up scaffolding, and I understand that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to mention the downtime, because every minute you're not operating because you have to build something, inspect it, tear that thing down, you're losing money. Can you elaborate a little bit on that as kind of another, kind of reason for being, if you will, for flyability?
Yeah, and thank you very much for bringing this up, because indeed, sort of these are two of the core elements of the trifecta of our value proposition. We already talked about health and safety. Reducing costs associated with the inspection is the other big one. It's indeed what gets us on the radar of many companies. And obviously, there is the element of time. Now, you could say time is money, and indeed, you would be right. But there is literally the time spent collecting data. And Don, one of the biggest improvement points for our technology is the duration of the battery. Now, we've made significant improvements in that regard. We've launched our bigger battery that allows us to double the flight time. We've launched the tether to allow for even longer flight time. But one of the constant points of improvement that we get in our scorecard from customers is, I want to be able to fly longer. And obviously, when the term of comparison is outdoor drones, it starts to be ahead in terms of comparison. For reference, we might be talking about 40, 50 minutes for outdoors versus 10, 12, 15 minutes inside with an Elios 3. However, what I always find frustrating about this argument is that sometimes a fairer terms of reference would be 10, 15 minutes of visual, thermal, digital, UT data with no data whatsoever. Because
Right.
more often than not, our customers are actually flying these in situations, in assets where they have absolutely no record. And this is particularly true for all kind of public infrastructure places where the blueprint has been lost or it's inaccurate. We're getting so much traction in the sewage industry because people realize that so much of the infrastructure is aging, and the technology is finally catching up with the needs for this kind of inspection. Tanks are probably the easiest assets to inspect with the drone like Helios. And you're absolutely right. You know, the scaffolding is timely, is expensive, is dangerous because, you know, we talked about confined spaces. With scaffolding, you actually get the double whammy, which is confined spaces that work at heights, which is a very, very dangerous combination.
That's a great point. And like you said, a lot of these places are just, they're downright dark. So let's just
Yeah.
throw that into the mix. But I really want to deep dive more into the drone itself, right? Because you're mentioning all of these use cases. You kind of talked about some of the improvements, but obviously the flexibility and the versatility of this drone in terms of the mission sets that it can support. We just had we have a full crew coming up that's going to be on energy. It's coming out tomorrow, actually, Junio. And I had a little bit of a preview. I know some of that discussion is going to talk about, the ROI, the return on investment for some drones, right? Because some enterprise operators, or asset owners are like, hey, I don't want to spend money on this thing. They don't appreciate that this one drone can do a whole host of missions. It's not just for one thing, right? So let's talk about the Elios 3, why right now it is considered the #1 indoor inspection drone worldwide. Tell us why that is.
Well, I think there's definitely a combination of ease of use. This transitioning from the Helios 2 to the Helios 3 was definitely the biggest challenge and the biggest request from our customers. It's a lot easier to turn an NDT inspector into a drone pilot than to do the other way around, right? So we wanted something that was resilient and capable at the same time to be operated with little or no prep time. And we feel confident enough that most drone pilots will be able to use this after one day of training. Obviously, if there is no prior knowledge of drone piloting, we do offer more extensive courses. However, and this is sort of where the technology really kicks in, we have created such a stable drone that some of our customers have really sort of compared it to the stability that you can get with an outdoor drone, but inside, which is really remarkable. And this is where sort of the benefit of having mounted a LiDAR kicks in for the Helios 3. So by being able to rely on digital data collected from the LiDAR in real time, and we'll see an example of that in just a minute, you basically achieve two objectives at the same time. The first one is that the pilot is actually able to gather digital data that he can use both live to navigate an environment that, as you said, can be unknown, is more often than not completely dark, might not fit the reality of the map and the trajectory. So having that real-time feedback from the LiDAR helps you tremendously to figure out where to go next, what to look for, where not to go. And second, and this is sort of the other terrific commercial opportunity that has opened up for Flyability, we have essentially created the opportunity to digitalize assets for confined spaces, which until a few years ago was basically science fiction. Because unless you carried with yourself a scanner inside tanks, inside mines, you would have absolutely no, or boilers. Let's imagine boilers or wind turbines. You would have no ability to create this kind of digital record. We now have customers that are basically capable of creating entire digital libraries, entire digital twins of their assets, not just outdoor, but also indoor. And that for any maintenance manager, any asset manager, it's invaluable, actionable intelligence.
Well, I want to comment on two things. One is the ease of flying this drone. I know before we got on the air, we talked about every year you co-host a little gathering in the evening at EDR. And for the past year or two, there was the ability to fly the Elios 3, like in the party, and all kind, beer in hand. No, seriously, all kinds of people were flying that thing. And most of them were not drone pilots, but they were able to get it up in the air and to maneuver it, in the smaller space that was available. But still, I think that speaks volumes. And then the second thing I wanted to say was, and maybe this is super obvious, but I mean, you guys build a cage around this thing, right? So this is, I think, one of the most distinctive features
Yeah,
of this drone. Of course, you know, the LiDAR and the, now I'm sure AI on board and all the things you guys have baked into this drone over time. But that cage, you know, when you talk about safety, when you talk about for people, but also honestly of the asset itself of the drone, because
yeah.
in those spaces, right, like you're bumping into things. How many drones do you have to crash, you know, when you're trying to do one of these operations? But with the cage you guys built, I mean, I really feel like that is a distinctive feature. You go to any show, you're not going to see another drone like yours. So
Yeah,
tell us a
no,
little bit about that.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was thinking the same. Like I've talked about everything except probably the most distinctive feature of our drone, which is indeed the cage. The cage really started as a necessity, and it's still very much is an integral component of the drone design. Why is it there? Is there as an additional element of safety to basically, one of our motto is expect the unexpected, right? So when we want to give pilots that level of comfort, of confidence, that even in situations that cannot be predicted or anticipated, you still have that margin of error, right? And the cage went from really being sort of um, um, a, a, a design necessity to actually being one of our most important strengths for one of the key payloads that we have developed, which is the UT module. Now, this has been the number one request.
UT, remind me, ultrasonic testing.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. And you
Uh,
said NDT earlier. For those watching that don't know what that means, it's non-destructive testing.
I apologize. I fall
No,
into the
that's
trap
okay. I don't
of
like
the
to interrupt
industry
people, and you said it, and
lingo.
I was like, I remember 2 years ago, I didn't know what that was, Junio.
Yeah, that's true
So,
because yeah,
yeah,
we operate in I think in a pretty limited niche where really sort of, and that's also what makes this job very exciting because it's a drone, but at the same time we get the opportunity to talk to a lot of expert that stands for as low as reasonably achievable. So nuclear expert, we get to talk to surveying people, we get to talk to metallurgists or non-destructive testing expert. So I do apologize for falling into the trap of the acronyms. But yes, so the ability to now perform thickness measurements with the probe would basically be impossible without a cage design, because in order to do that, you really have to come in contact with the metal surface.
yeah,
And if the blades were to be exposed, the marginal the success ratio would basically be, one measurement you lose one drone, one measurement you lose one drone,
yeah,
because you really have to go and kiss the metallic surface with the probe in order to get the measurement. So um, it's true that you could say that the drone sort of was built around the cage, but it's also true that we've taken this unique design and really managed to make the most out of it.
yeah. Well, I think people agree. I think you're looking at what, almost 3,000, Elios drones deployed across 50 different countries or
And
more,
counting.
and counting, always growing. So that's quite a statistic there, Unio. So I think we have a really cool video. I want you to walk us through what we're seeing. It's almost like a montage of maybe some of the different missions. So here we go.
Yeah, so I think that this is indeed a collection of various drones. We spent most of the 25 minutes here talking about the hardware, but there is a whole brain behind the operation, and that's really sort of the software component that goes into operating the drone, so piloting it. This is we can see now some excerpts from both the tablet, that's what we call cockpit, that's the proprietary flyability software that we use to fly the drone, and then you have inspector, which is basically what you use to download and process both the visual and the LiDAR data that you've collected during the mission. And indeed, it would be right now unthinkable to imagine the hardware without the software. Until 6 years ago, if you went into Flyability careers page, you would have found probably, let's say, out of 10 job openings, 7 would have been for hardware and 3 would be for software, right? Now the proportion is significantly reversed towards software because we're really trying with the improvements of microprocessor technology, of GPUs, to really extract the maximum possible value from the same hardware. And that's why there is so much increased emphasis on R&D on the software side.
Well, you have a lot of different improvements in the Elios 3, and I want to walk through them because there's several new features and capabilities. You mentioned a tether. I believe you mentioned the high capacity battery, but let's kind of walk through these one by one, just to be clear with everybody, like what this drone brings to the table, if you will. Let's start with the tether power unit. Why is the tether important? Like, why do people need a tether in these environments? And what does this do for the drone?
So the main benefit of the tether unit is the ability to operate for significantly longer flight times. And we can say unlimited, but it's not a problem. It's not a matter of the flight time itself. It's more about how much data can the drone store before the SD cards are full. So the tether, for the avoidance of doubt, provides only power. There's no data transmission going through. And the tether is really sort of the best accompaniment to the ultrasonic testing module. When we talk about inspections in confined spaces that require thickness measurements of metallic surfaces, we're not just talking about a couple of dots. We may be talking about hundreds of data points that need to be collected. This, with a traditional battery, would require tens of hours in order to be performed. Now, one of the sectors that has been more open to adopt this kind of innovation has been the maritime sector. Flyability has done a tremendous amount of work on this, also with the American Bureau of Shipping. We started to seeing official recognition by class societies for this kind of inspections to be performed with drones. So imagine if you were in the ballast tank of an offshore facility or of a giant cargo ship. There are very strict limitations in terms of how many batteries you can carry with you, and the sheer difficulty of carrying them on board, plus the operational challenges of always keeping them charged and keeping the drones flying and keeping up with very demanding maintenance schedules. Remove all of this, and suddenly you have a drone that is capable of flying for several hours, repeatedly, continuously, going from point to point to gather all the data points that you need. So we wanted to improve on the ability of the drone to have as little downtime as possible and really use those so precious hours of downtime in order to collect as many and as accurate data as possible. So the tether is really an extension, pardon the pun, to allow us to go even further in terms of time and operational time, uptime of the drone.
Well, excellent. And even without the tether, you mentioned the battery improvements, and I think you said it delivers up to 50% more flight time. So is it, you mentioned maybe 12 minutes, or, are we talking now 30, or what are we talking on average with the new battery?
So with the new battery, it's obviously like everything relying on battery power. It's a combination of time and weight. So it's affected by, or it's impaired, or it's affected by what kind of payload you mount on board. With the I don't want to I don't want to say anything that it's inaccurate here. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, with the high capacity battery, you should be able to go up to 15 minutes. That could be 10-15% more or less, depending on whether you're mounting additional payloads or removing additional payloads. And this is actually one of the key features of the Elios 3, because we keep talking about the same drone, but
Yeah.
there are different payloads that can actually be mounted on it. And this is one of the great design intuitions that we had back in the day, already 3.5 years ago, when we launched the product. So it's designed to be modular. It's meant to be modular. So first came the drone, then we added the radiation sensor, then we added the ultrasonic testing module, and then we added the gas sensor, because
Yeah, let's
going back,
talk about that, because I
yeah.
mean, flammable gas, when we were talking about health and safety, I mean, that's a huge issue, right? So tell us about this flammable gas sensor that can plug and play.
Yeah, so the once again, thinking about when we rank the dangers of operating in confined spaces, 56 to 58% of the fatalities are tied to atmospheric hazards, so either oxygen deficiency or toxic gas, and these are invisible threats. So that they're very hard to predict, they're very hard to manage, and it became really a business priority to develop a sensor that would allow us to allow for safer human operation in these areas. Because again, there is a lot of misconceptions related to the deployment of robotic technology, saying that it will take jobs away from people. This has never been our premise. This has never been our mission. We accept as part and parcel of the industries where we work in that the heavy lifting will still be done by the humans. Uh, Drones such as ours are not able or capable of repairing something that is damaged. Maybe one day down the line they will be, but certainly not right now. But the idea is not to replace scaffolding. The idea is to allow people to enter the tank safely to set up the scaffolding. The idea is to be able to say, instead of setting up scaffolding for the whole tank, I just need to do it in this section. I can do it more efficiently. I can do it more safely. And obviously, when we consider that one of our core application is tanks, tanks equal dangerous gases, developing a gas sensor became really, once again, an extension and giving that additional layer of security of saying, okay, before we even consider putting humans inside,
Yeah.
let's actually test whether this is an environment fit for a human to enter. Because even
That's
if you
awesome.
have, yeah.
Yeah. And we mentioned the darkness, and you guys did something to improve the lighting. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So this was probably one of the best testament in terms of Flyability's ability to integrate feedback from users. So we're talking about power, but it would be a detriment to the oil and gas industry to underestimate how important this has been for the development of the technology. And one of the key feedback points that we got from users in the oil and gas industry is that they lacked the ability to replicate the torch in hand technique to identify pitting, which is a particular kind of corrosion that cannot be seen with direct floodlight. You can only see it if you actually direct the light at 45 degrees, because you're actually able to see the shadow of the corrosion and identify really these small but critical holes into the metallic structure, right?
Oh, wow.
And this is something that NDT inspectors, non-destructive testing inspectors, tank inspectors, they do every day, but that prior to the Elios technology was unseen on a drone. So most drones that operate in confined spaces, they still do not have the level of lighting, of quality lighting that we have. and very few of them have actually been able to nail this flashlight in hand technique that allows them to park the drone at 45 degrees, select only the modules of lighting coming from the right angle of the drone, and create the shadow that allows you to have verification about the condition of the pitting.
That's unbelievable. And, we talked about the brains and the advanced autonomous capabilities. You also have, I'm kind of scanning through my notes here. Oh, the cloud. So, look, the bottom line, it's always about the data, right? Like, so you guys perfected the hardware, you've improved the software, and why at the end of the day, it's to collect information, as you just alluded to, whether it's pitting or something else that a stakeholder needs to make, kind of an informed decision, usually on prevention, preventive maintenance, things of that nature. Junio, as I think about it, a lot of these requirements, especially in the energy sector, are driven by compliance or driven by regulation. And when I talked with your team before we got you on the show, they said they really wanted you to mention some of the OSHA updates in California and what they mean for confined space work, especially in power generation. So can you kind of give us a very quick overview of that and like how that relates to the Elios 3?
Yeah, so what's very interesting about the new California legislation, Title 8 CCR 1951-1956, that actually took effect on January 1st, 2026, is that it actually establishes that the gold standard for confined spaces inspections is actually the one that it's in the general industry. So the reform targets primarily the construction industry, where we're getting more and more traction, once again, because of the ability of the drone to capture significant amount of data in a very safe and efficient way. So for instance, if we just think about the sheer amount of data centers that are being built all around the country, but especially in California,
Right.
now, obviously, everyone that is going to be constructing these kind of data centers, if there are confined spaces involved, they will need to comply with this new legislation. And the changes there, and that's where it gets interesting, because we can actually see that the legislator moved the bar for the construction industry to meet other general industry like oil and gas, like agriculture, where sort of the confined space legislation used to be more stringent, is about the formal classification process. So this defining basically whether an area is permit required or not. We talked about gas sensing before. This was previously required only for the general industry. Now it's also required in the construction industry. So you need to do an evaluation testing and entry verification testing before entering the confined space. There needs to be, there wasn't before there, a written on-file entry permit. So just imagine sort of what the industry used to be before on-file written entry permits used to be. Could really be done sort of on the fly with incredible risk for the personnel. And finally, I think this is also a very important development of the legislation, is train and standby rescue personnel before any entry. So it's actually interesting to see how the construction industry has to be closer to power generation and not the way around. The real tagline for me, or the real message for me here, is that the fastest way to de-risk a confined space entry is not necessarily a better permit management. For sure, that's going to help. However, it's no risk. It's not entering the space at all. So
Yeah.
that's for me, that's the key message. The fact whether it's California construction rule or long-standing general industry standards, it's really about introducing this technology as a requirement, as it's done already in some countries. Because, for instance,
Yep.
in the UK, as part of the duty of care and confined space legislation, if there is an alternative to human entry in confined spaces, the employer is legally obliged to use that piece of technology.
Wow.
So this is what helped us a lot, tremendously, to develop that market. So if you can prove that there is an alternative to human entry, you do have to use that alternative to human entry. And I think that's sort of really the gold standard for confined space entry. And I think it's interesting to see some developments in one of the largest industries in the US, one of the largest markets of the US, but there's still some way to go.
Yeah, well, look, as a lawyer, this is really intriguing to me, right? Because especially like this California legislation and the law in the UK that you just mentioned, it creates a duty of care. And as an asset owner, if you fall short of that and something bad happens, you've just created undue risk for yourself. So I love the idea of the Elios 3 as an advanced scout, if you will, going in and kind of making sure the area is safe, in addition to then collecting data, mapping it, or inspecting it, all the things that this incredible drone can do. And this is, by the way, everybody's an award-winning drone. I know last year you guys got the UT Safety Award recognized by the Offshore Support Journal, and just 2 years before that, the World Nuclear Exhibition granted you guys the Innovation Award. So keep up the great work. It's amazing. Our time is flying, Junio. Just like the Elios 3 flies, so does time when we're talking about it. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure that we close this episode out with kind of where, what your vision is going forward, and, of course, where people can find Flyability next. Obviously, next week in Houston, if everybody's going to be in Petro Metro, I know your team is going to be out there, your CEO. Looking forward to having him on our AGN Live from the show next Tuesday afternoon. So check that out, everybody. But tell us a little bit more. I'm going to cede the floor to you to close us out.
Thank you. So we didn't really have time, unfortunately, to talk about sort of some of the innovation on the software side, but check out our website in terms of automation. We have come such a long way. We have the ability to repeat inspections. We have the ability to pick up inspections in large environments where the drone had previously left off. We always talked about autonomy as a journey, not as a destination. And it's really remarkable to see how far we've come from the launch of the platform. And this is sort of still going to be our emphasis going forward, being able to deliver more automation across more assets and more industries. As far as Flyability goes, we're going to be at EDRS in Houston. You mentioned that. We're going to be at CUAV in Vegas. We're hiring, so please do check our career page. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you, Don. It's always a pleasure. And I look forward, hopefully, to doing this in person next time.
All right. Sounds great to me. And everybody out there, thank you so much for your time and attention. Check out the Elios 3. Check out the website. We've got the QR code up there. And we're getting close to ending this month dedicated to energy. But before we do, we've got a lot going on. Like I said, we got the full crew tomorrow. So check that out at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then next week, AGN Live from EDR. And then we're going to be doing Dawn of Autonomy from Houston with our buddies Nate Ernst from Tactian Group and Charlton Evans from End State Solutions. So it's an action-packed couple of weeks before we end this incredible month. Again, thanks to Volatus Aerospace. And for now, everybody, thank you, Junio. And that is all she wrote.